Wednesday, 5 August 2026. 3 Asia-Pacific AI stories before your first coffee. Washington's FCC is drafting an import ban on new models of Chinese optical transceivers, the high-speed modules that move data between GPUs in every AI training rack. Reuters reported on 4 August that officials hope to publish the restriction this year, though the agency could still amend or drop the measure. The move targets vendors like AIinAsia, which holds roughly 27% of the global data center transceiver market and earns about 90% of its revenue outside China, making it the dominant supplier to US hyperscalers building out AI infrastructure across Asia and North America. Why it matters? US alternatives Coherent and Lumentum lack the production volume to backfill Chinese supply quickly, so rack-level costs rise before any meaningful supply shift occurs. Hyperscalers and co-location operators across Asia-Pacific will feel the squeeze first, particularly in Singapore, Tokyo, and Jakarta, where AI cluster buildouts are accelerating. Chinese module makers have already been hedging by adding assembly capacity in Southeast Asia, with Thailand the most common address, so the ban may accelerate a geographic reshuffling of the optical supply chain, rather than eliminating Chinese participation outright. Capital allocators should track whether Southeast Asian assembly qualifies for exemption under the final rule, because that single detail will determine whether the restriction bites or simply reroutes. So, Beijing-based Minimax released the rates for its H3 video generation model on Monday, then immediately restricted free use in 4 markets: the United States, the EU, the United Kingdom, and South Korea. Developers in those jurisdictions must apply for a formal license and pass a deployment review before they can run the model locally, while paid API access remains available globally. South Korea is the only Asian economy on the restricted list, making it the first time a major Chinese open weights release has split the Asia-Pacific creative AI landscape into 2 distinct license classes. Why it matters? Studios and post-production houses across Seoul now face a compliance gate that competitors in Tokyo, Singapore, and Southeast Asia do not. Any Korean developer building video pipelines on H3 weights needs a signed license before shipping, adding legal overhead and timeline risk that neighbors can skip entirely. Minimax cited regulatory uncertainty and unnamed copyright proceedings, a framing that signals more geographic carve-outs could follow as EU and Korean copyright enforcement tightens. Capital allocators backing Asia-focused generative video startups should map which portfolio companies sit inside versus outside the restricted zone, because the cost and speed gap between the 2 classes will compound as Chinese labs keep shipping open weights with selective strings attached. Now, New Delhi introduced the Taxation and Other Laws Amendment Bill 2026 in the Lok Sabha on 4 August, stripping out 2 approval queues that previously required separate government notification for both the foreign cloud company and the Indian data center hosting it. The bill also lets leased facilities qualify, widening the pool of eligible Indian capacity and unlocking a 20-year tax holiday running to 2047 for foreign firms that procure Indian data center services, a centerpiece incentive from the 2026 to 2027 budget. Hours later, IT Secretary S. Krishnan publicly warned against single-source dependence and said the time to start thinking about an AI law is now. Why it matters? India is making a deliberate bet that regulatory speed and tax incentives can pull hyperscaler workloads away from Singapore, Tokyo, and Jakarta, the 3 cities that currently anchor most of Asia's cloud capacity. Builders running inference or training jobs in the region now have a reason to price Indian co-location into their stack, especially with leased facilities newly eligible. Capital allocators should watch whether AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud accelerate Indian availability zone buildouts in response. The second-order effect worth tracking is Krishna's CMD call for an AI law. If Delhi goes open infrastructure policy with prescriptive AI regulation, the cost calculus for foreign cloud shifts back down, and the autonomy front could take that unit